So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes, their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this morning, I'm delighted to have with us Jeremy Meadowcroft, who's SME Business Funding Manager at Finance for Enterprise. So, Jeremy, thank you for spending a bit of time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, FFE, what you do, how you help people, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chris. Thanks for the invite. Yeah, so I'm a lending manager. That's straightforward, but I work for a finance or enterprise, which are often misunderstood that we are what's called a CDFI, which not many people know what that is. Essentially, we're a non-profit organization that delivers funding to businesses that can't access funding through sort of mainstream funders. I'm
Yep.
talking banks, tier one, tier two lenders. And the problem is that so many businesses across the country need capital to grow, to
Yep.
prosper, to expand. But
Yep.
when they can't get it, they take that decline as they can't get it anywhere, and they don't know where
Yes.
else to go. So 40 years ago, government set up these CDFIs. It was our 40th birthday last week to give us
Congratulations.
funding to deliver it to these deserving businesses that need capital to grow, to create the jobs for tomorrow,
Yep.
and to supply chains, to drive the economy. So that's really what we do in a nutshell, and we've been doing it for 40 years.
Wowzers, that's brilliant. And couldn't agree more. What you said is we see it time and time again. People go for funding, get rejected, and assume that means they're unfundable. So what if you're okay, give us sort of example of the type of organisations or businesses that you help and support.
Well, following the banking crisis, and we're talking 10 years ago, many banks don't really provide a relationship service to
No.
businesses until they turn over. They'll say five, seven, but 10 million. So you're
Yep.
not getting that relationship service anymore. It's in a call center.
Yep.
And the complexity of businesses, 99% of businesses in the UK turn over under 10 million. So the
Yes.
majority of businesses are owner managed, one
Yep.
or two partners, husbands and wives, women, men. And these businesses operate across all sectors across the country. They're all taxpayers, they all pay corporation tax, and they all create jobs. So the majority of businesses in the UK are small businesses that need access to funding when there is no relationship. And look, all the banks have disappeared off the high street. So
Yep.
where do they go? And this is the problem, that it's the smaller lending, and I'm talking sort of up to quarter of a million, that businesses need real action, real access to cash to
Yep.
really win that contract or to expand. And
Yep.
that's where the lack is, because that's the funding that the banks don't do anymore.
Brilliant. So I, I'm I'm what's the right word? I might feel embarrassed here, but how come I don't know about you? I mean, I operate with businesses all the
Great, yeah,
time, and
great question. And I give talks on the funding landscape across different regions, across areas, and many people say, "Do you know what? You're the best kept secret." It's
yes,
not a tag we're proud of, but we're a small group that are about 10 to 12 CDFIs in the country, generally delivering money in their sector, which often is their geography.
yep,
So there's one in the southwest, there's a couple in the Midlands, and these are often coastal areas or rural areas or
yes,
areas of what we call financial deprivation.
yes,
So sometimes they only operate in their geography. So of course, there aren't a lot of these in London where there is, cash swirling around. So whilst CDFIs are a network, we come under a banner called Responsible Finance, and Responsible Finance has been recognised by the British Business Bank, has been recognised by really the main lenders as providing the funding where they created a void 10 years ago.
yep,
And for the first time in Britain's history, CDFIs have now been funded by a high street bank. So a high street bank has seen how CDFIs are delivering cash to working capital to businesses that need it to grow and prosper.
yep,
And they've actually given us a slug of money, because for 40 years our money has normally been government money,
yep,
Northern Powerhouse Investment Fund, European funds, regional development funds, all of these funds that we manage and deliver. But now we've actually got funding from a bank, along with a lot of other
yep.
organisations that are cash rich and give us the money because of the ethical, the economic and social impact that comes when we lend. So for every pound we lend, there is about £4 85 of benefit measured to come back to the country in economic growth value.
Incredible.
Mm.
Absolutely incredible. Right, we need to do our bit to get you better known across the country. That's
Yeah,
100%. No, because you're absolutely right. It's like, and I've worked with quite a few of the banks and bankers in general, and they're great guys. But if you're doing well, they want to lend you money. If you're not doing, if you, but if you need money to grow, and but you don't have the track record for that, it's really quite so difficult.
Well, the number one reason why people get declined is actually it's not always about their business, it's the fact they don't have any security. So
Yes.
they don't own the premises, they're not prepared to put the
Yep.
house up as collateral. So unsecured lending is what the government stopped the banks doing 10 years ago. And that's the void. So all of our loans are unsecured. And this
Okay.
is the key. So it's where business can access money where they don't
Yep.
have security. So the banks do want to help them, but they don't do that unsecured anymore.
Got
So
you.
all of our loans are unsecured, and that
Yep.
means totally unsecured.
Yep.
But we're taking the risks that the banks don't take. But
Yes.
that's because we lend, we're all old school grey haired ex-bankers. We've all been taught how to lend the manual way. And we sit down and we get under the bonnet and we ask a lot more questions than
Brilliant.
algorithmic sort of lenders, where you type in a few
Yep.
questions and you get a yes or a no. And that's where the computer says no. So
Yep.
we really do try and find the way to say yes when others, computers or organizations say no.
So you're the new old star bankers. The old bank manager we used to go and see and knew our
Every
business.
every customer says that to me. They say you're just like an old bank relationship manager, and I say that's
Love it.
exactly what we are. Yeah.
Look, absolutely love it. Because that's, it can be very frustrating for businesses, including my own, but also, people I work with. And you can see the great opportunity, but it's, ultimately it's an algorithm that says no. And it's not touching, feeling. It's not going, this is amazing. Looking around, yeah, I can see this. Yeah, brilliant, wonderful. So Jeremy, if maybe you could tell us a little bit more about your background. You mentioned obviously banking historically, but how you got into business and why this particular one for you. What drives you forward?
Well, so I was in a relationship face-to-face banking for 30 years of my career, and
Brilliant.
that was both really, but to understand that when we said no, there was an option was a learning point that I had in about 2015. And subsequently I thought, well, where we say no as a bank, I can refer them to these CDFIs who do unsecured lending. And
Yes.
that really got me an invite to come and join them. So I joined the CDFIs 9 years ago, and I've been lending ever since for them. But that's in between that, I ran a little angel investment group. So I've really understood the difference between debt and equity and
Yep.
what's called mainstream lending and alternative lending. And
Yep.
when you've really walked those paths, when
Yep.
you've actually worked, you've actually done the miles, you really understand when you get an applicant looking at what they think they want, how best they'll be served, and where best to signpost them to. I had a client yesterday who came looking for a loan. He doesn't need a loan. What he needs is equity, but I know where to send him to. So again, it's having a good network through real experience
Yep.
of how and where to find the best solution for the client. It might be us, it might not. But when
Yep.
it's not, I don't say no and send them to the front door. I signpost them to somebody
Yeah.
else that can help
Brilliant.
them.
Brilliant. Same here. It's like we'll make sure you get the help you need. It may not be from us, but we're well connected to people. Brilliant. So looking back over your career, so to date, what are some of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome?
Well, peculiarly, I came as a 17-year-old Australian schoolboy with no qualifications whatsoever. I don't have anything in Australia. And to apply to a bank for a job, and they're asking you how many O levels, how many A levels, GCSEs, and T level. We just don't have anything like that. So I realized that the only thing I could do was get a job in a bank in Australia, and I came here with experience, and it really, really was the difference. I got declined by a lot of banks. I was just a 17-year-old lad who had no qualifications. But what I said at the interview was that my experience, my dealing with customers face to face, handling millions of pounds in cash, balancing the till every night, is evidence rather than certificates. And it got me the job. And what that's always led me to believe is experience is as valued. I don't have qualifications. There's far more people qualified than me. But what I'm saying is true experience has a value. And I see children who are going to university to get degrees and wondering whether they're ever going to use that degree. And what I see is other people going down a route of practical, getting a job, starting their learning on the job, and I see them equally knowledgeable after 3 or 4 years, and that's equally
Yep.
value. So, things like the apprentice route, I think are going to become more and more popular
Yes.
as we go forward. So, experience necessarily over certificate. That was my biggest challenge, but that's how I got a job here in England.
Amazing. Amazing. So did you come over with your family or did you come?
No, we did. I came over at 17. I'd worked for 2 years, not taken any holidays, saved it all up, and bought a flight here and basically applied to every bank to see if they would employ
Wow.
a young Australian lad. And I started
Amazing.
to work at this bank called Lloyds Bank in Halifax. I didn't even know where Halifax was. All I knew was John Noakes came from Halifax.
Oh, amazing. Absolutely amazing. So, obviously, you work with businesses, day in, day out in what you're doing. What are the biggest learnings you've had about growing a successful business from your perspective?
Well, the beauty is that both as a bank relationship manager and what I do now, I get to go and see hundreds and thousands of
Yeah.
business owners. I see clever people with brilliant businesses. I see people who are struggling. I see people who have partnerships that are dysfunctional. You see everything. And whilst I'm not an expert, I get to see the best practice that one business owner might be doing here
Yes.
with another
Great.
business owner there. And I love sort of sharing that best practice or suggestions. And again, having a broad network to say, I know people that could help you with that in terms of operational efficiency or that in terms of marketing a website. It's not just always about money. Money doesn't solve all problems.
Yes.
Solves a lot, but it doesn't solve all problems.
Yeah.
So, I get to see businesses well run. I won't say badly run, but I see them dysfunctionally run.
Yeah.
Family businesses sometimes are
Yes.
complex because there's politics involved, but
Definitely.
all of those different things come into play, and you get to see good practices and where people are trying to grow a business through organic growth, and they've really got something and they've established it, and
Yeah.
they've got a brand or a name, and then it's about multiplying that and
Yes.
true growth.
Yes. And I suppose it might help people that might be watching, just thinking about what you do and how you help people. What are some of the, I guess what makes a business, I forget this question right, so forgive me, but it's almost like what would make a business lendable for you and what wouldn't? If someone's watching right now and thinking, well, that sounds great. I've been turned down by the high street banks. I didn't know there were other options. What would be business? Is there some clear do's and don'ts that you go, well, sorry, that's not an
Yeah,
option.
well, I mean, when you're taught lending as a young man, the first canon of lending, there's eight, is character. So for us, it's understanding the character. Now, that doesn't mean proving that you're the best person in the world. What it means is us understanding your strengths and understanding your weaknesses and seeing what you've done about them. And this is why many businesses, like marriages, are an actual combination of skill sets.
Yes.
He does this and she does that, or she does that and she does that. And you see these roles. But what I've always strived to sort of share with the owner who I'm dealing with is to say, where are your aspects of the job that you can't do, you don't do very well, you don't enjoy, and how do you plug that gap? Do you recruit for that? Do you outsource for that? Or do you have a like a mentor that you work with? Or do you have somebody that you lean on?
Yeah.
And most people have that to some degree at some stage in their career that has really been a game changer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that isn't the bank manager and it isn't the accountant necessarily, unless it's a financial matter. It really is somebody that's going to talk to them objectively. And we used to say, come out of the office and look into it because you can't see the wood for the trees. So how often do you get a chance to stand out of your business and look into it objectively, either with or without somebody who is asking you some
Brilliant.
generic questions to find that. So a little bit of business expertise has been involved in the journey of most business owners' success.
Brilliant. No, I love that. I think the analogy of taking a step back it's okay. I quite often draw a little stick man with his nose right against a wall, and it's a dead end because it's. But when he takes a step back and increases his vision, it's actually just a hurdle to jump over. It's only a bit taller than his eye line, and actually, there's an opportunity to jump over it with a bigger vision. And I think it's something people say to us all the time. It's just that ability to have somebody that pulls you out the day to day and says, "Okay, where are we heading? Are we still heading in the right direction?
Yeah.
What are the pitfalls of that?" So, absolutely, yeah, brilliant. And obviously, we mentioned coaching a little bit, but I'm keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, life in general. Who's had the biggest impact on you?
Well, I'm actually a football coach.
Oh, great.
I've been coaching for 20 years, from young children up to sort of 18.
Yeah.
And I coach for Huddersfield Town Foundation, which is a charitable foundation. And we coach hundreds and hundreds of children that
Oh, brilliant.
don't get into grassroots sports. Perhaps they're on the periphery of
Yes.
society. But we use
Yeah.
sport for many things. But for all my coaching qualifications through the FA, I used to work for the FA as a coach mentor. And I would go into clubs and they would sort of say, "Oh, here's the expert." And I would look at them in the same way as a business. I'd say, "Look, you're a great coach. I can see that, but you're managing on your own. What's the bit of the job that you don't like?" And they would say, running a spreadsheet for the uniform for the kids, or
Yeah.
getting the transport. And so again, you think, well, if you'll give up if you don't get an answer to this. So we need to solve that problem. So for me, mentoring is a very important point as well. That how can you be there not to be the expert and tell, but how can you show them how to get a solution to part of the role? So, my coaching, I've come across many sports coaches,
Yeah.
and in coaching, we have a thing called beg, borrow, and steal.
Yeah.
And it means if you hear a line, or if you see an action, or you pick up on a coaching point, you steal it. You
Yeah.
borrow it, you use it, and I use it all the time. And there's a little thing I do in terms of children getting in line. And every time I do this character, I know the coach, and he's 72 years old now, and I know the time he did it for me on the pitch, and all I'm doing is replicating. So
Brilliant.
a lot of times you're just picking up bits and pieces and then regurgitating them. But yeah, coaches I've worked with through a sports coaching, as well as really good managers,
Yeah.
are people who probably make up the vocabulary that I use day to day when I'm out with my customers.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Love it. Oh, absolutely great. And it's something obviously as an organization of um, business coaches, it is very much we've taken so much from sport because coaching started in sport, let's be perfectly frank, and let's learn from, as you say, beg, borrow, and steal. So our director of coaching nationally is actually an ex-Olympic badminton coach. He's totally embedded in the business, in the business part of what we do, but very much mindset. And I think a lot of people, interestingly enough, Jeremy, I think they come to us for solutions, systems, processes, because we've got a whole bunch of stuff. But I think the biggest value, or certainly the as big a value, is the mindset changes that we help people develop of thinking that different, taking a step back, getting the bigger vision, and really getting real clarity. And whether it's from your coaching or any sources, do you have any favourite quotes or sayings that you find yourself using on a regular basis, whether that's in business or sport?
Well, I do actually, yeah. And the funny story about this was, so persistence is my favorite quote, and I know resilience has become, a key over the last few years since COVID. But there's a quote. There's a quote, persistence. I'll read it for you if you like, because I
Please.
have it on my wall. And it's by a guy called Calvin Coolidge, who I never understood. And my dad sent me this quote, and I put it on the wall when I was 18. And it goes like this. It says, "Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent won't. The world's full of unsuccessful men with talent. Genius won't. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. And education won't, because the world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent." Okay, it's a long quote, sorry, but
Love it. Love it. Of
Calvin Coolidge was the 33rd president of the United States.
course he was.
Not many
Yeah.
people have heard of him. And I lived in America coaching football for a year. And I was going to one of these covered bridges that I liked
Yes.
in New England.
Yeah.
And as I came off the longest span covered bridge in America, there was a brown sign that said Calvin Coolidge's homestead. And I just thought, sometimes things happen in life.
Yes.
I was a mile and I drove down, his homestead was there. And this quote was in relief on the wall. And I
Love
just
it.
thought, wow, I never knew where he lived. I didn't know anything about him. But isn't it funny? That quote was given to me at 18, and I put it on sugar paper on the wall by my desk at 18 years old, and I still have it to this day.
Love
And
it.
it's just one of those quotes that I think is still remains pertinent.
Oh yeah, I 100%. Because as you say, persistence is part of resilience. It is, resilience gives us persistence all the way around. But also, yeah, just in life, isn't it? You just keep going because and I think in the sort of sales environment is something that we work a lot with people is, I think that the sort of stats are, if you take from a sales perspective, most people will take action on a sales or marketing message after the sixth or seventh touch, but most salespeople give up after the first one or two. So, like, I'll tell them it, and if they don't come back to me, then they're not interested. Well, no, they had other things to do at that point. You have to keep that persistently communicate with people. And yeah, no, what a great quote. I will look that up. Thank you very much. And do you have any books or podcasts you'd recommend on business or success in general?
Um, it's hard. There's so much been written, and I think today businesses are defined by the sectors they're in. So rather than literature that probably gets out of date, there are a few general good startup business guides. There's a couple written by Enterprise Nation, do a really good one that's
Yep.
available for free to people who are startup businesses. And obviously, the internet has taken over a lot of generic
Yes.
knowledge. But the idea to get a framework and then to populate it with some thought is something that we do with funding applications. It's what I recommend all business startup businesses to do, to create a plan and then populate it, chapter by chapter, on competition and
Yes.
and how are you going to staff it and
Yep.
how are you going to price it and that. And it breaks big tasks into smaller tasks and
Yep.
therefore makes them more manageable. And so for me, it's following either people who have done what you've done are
Yep.
doing. And
Yep.
remember that you're not the first person to have invented this product or this sector.
Yep.
And somebody's probably been through your pain before. How can you find a way of reaching out or contacting them where you're attractive to them? You only want 10 minutes of their time, or you're going to subscribe to their podcast because you
Yes.
can learn so much from people who have done it before.
Yep.
Yes, you might be on the cutting edge of technology, it might be brand new, but there'll be principles of what you're doing that lots of people have done before. And rather than trying to do everything yourself, try and think how you can learn those key points quickly from
Yep.
from people predecessors to you. So I think there's a bit of time spent by owners to think about the sector they're in, the product they're in, and then
Yes.
seek out the leaders accordingly.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And on the same note of learning, what would you say you've learned about yourself throughout your journey so far?
Good things come in small packages. I think this
Ah,
persistence, this persistent determination thing is a funny thing because in sport, when I see children who are like me, I'm only 5'5", and I was always the little kid on the field. But the very best players, the Paul Scholes, the Iniestas, the Lionel
I see.
Messis, they
Yeah.
they were all rejected
Yes.
because they were too small.
Yeah.
And what they actually did is they actually worked at their what they had to do harder because they couldn't rely on physically getting past a player. They had to work out a different way of. So they've actually worked harder. And if you want to see evidence of it, roll back and watch Paul Scholes receive balls. He will take 5 steps before he receives a ball. The ball's coming to his feet, but he'll take 5 extra steps to make it just right that his first touch is just right. And this is the difference. So I think smaller players or
Yep.
sport people have to work that bit harder to be equal. And then when they'll get that growth spurt later on, they will find themselves head and above the shoulders of others. So for me, it's always keep going and don't worry because there'll be a way that you can adapt to bring that level playing field up. And it will stand you in good stead. You'll actually exceed.
Love it. Love it. I will. I'm a Welsh rugby fan, so I'll add Shane Williams into that Welsh winger who was told too small, never going to make it, and probably
Yeah.
the best winger, one of the best wingers we've ever had. So 100%. And I'm keen to get your view of this. An action coach, our definition of a true business is a commercial, profitable enterprise that can work without the owner. And it's the working without the owner's key. So it's obviously got to work. It's got to be profitable. What's your take on that? Does that make sense?
Well, interesting you use that word. So we're called finance for enterprise,
Yep.
specifically, not companies, businesses. We can lend to a CIC, a charity, a limited company. The point is we are responsible lenders, so we lend on affordability. If somebody's
Yep.
asking for money and they can't demonstrate affordability, or they have a model where they're not generating revenue, then clearly it's not responsible to lend to them. But
Yes.
that might be a charity. It might be a
Yeah.
CIC. So for us, any enterprise is an organization that
Brilliant.
is providing a good or a service
Yep.
at a cost that means that they can cover all of their costs, whether that's overheads or staff, etc., and choose to either make a profit or reinvest those profits back in. But it
Brilliant.
has to be selling a product and has to be selling at a price higher than its operating costs. Otherwise, it's a loss-making enterprise. So yeah, so we lend to again, that's another reason why some organizations can't access funding because their legal status
Yes.
excludes them from most lenders.
Yes.
So that's why we call finance for
Enterprise.
enterprises.
No. Love
Yeah.
it. And thanks for that differentiation because I say We
Mhm.
work with lots of different enterprises ourselves, so there may be people watching that exactly fit that bill.
Yeah,
Um,
and remember, we've been doing this for 40 years. CDFIs were invented by, I think it was John Major in 1984. So the point is, governments always recognise that funding is needed and try and
yeah,
do it. Who they deliver it through, they're not household names, but there is always going to be funding there for them because that support is there. These are good, deserving businesses that need to be helped and supported.
absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. Brilliant. So looking forward a little bit, Jeremy, what does the future look like for you guys, and what challenges do you think you face, if any?
Uh, Profile awareness that we're here.
Yeah,
We want to get more money out of the door. We're being recognised as an industry more and more,
yeah,
and therefore funding lines are being opened up to us. As I say, for the first time in Britain's history, a high street bank has given us a huge slug of funding to enable us to deliver, to continue doing what we're doing, and that's only going to grow. So
yeah,
more banks will do that. In
yeah.
America, all the banks fund their CDFIs. That's their model, and that's what we'll do. So I think we'll be getting more and more capital, and we'll be delivering more and more into this alternative
Brilliant.
finance sector. So for us, it's just making sure that businesses, small, big, long, rural, out on the coast, in the countryside, making sure they know that there is a network of CDFIs that can deliver that funding as and when it's needed to them.
Brilliant. Love it. And I'm keen to know what advice you'd give to anybody that was thinking of going into business right now. What would be your advice from your perspective?
Do your research, structure your plan, and identify the things that you can't do or don't know about, and think about how you can go about getting people to help you to do that. Doesn't necessarily mean an employee, doesn't necessarily mean a partner, doesn't necessarily mean an investor, but it's being resourceful and thinking, where can you go to speak to people who understand that sector or that industry, and how can you have a relationship with them so that you can bounce ideas off, whether that's a mentor or a coach or somebody who's done what you've done before, and get almost a relationship with them that you value and you enjoy,
Yeah,
and you spin and bounce off each other. We call them sounding boards, we call them all these different words,
yeah,
but there are good people out there.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And finally, what would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you go back, or let's say a 17-year-old you, if you could go back in time and do that?
Get on the plane, because
Get on the plane. That's a
it was
great
it
one.
was 12,000 miles was a long way to go in those days. You had to confirm a flight 7 days before you flew. There was no internet. There was no phone. A letter took 7 days to get to Australia in those days.
Yeah,
So a big leap into the unknown. But yeah, I'm glad I did it. But yeah, so all I would say is
get on the plane.
pursue what you're trying to do, whether it's your dreams, go for it.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Get on the plane. I think I'm gonna take that one. I think I'll do that. Just get on the plane. I will use that in the future. I love it. Jerry, it's been absolutely fascinating talking to you, and I really appreciate you coming on talking to us. And we'll do whatever we can to make more people aware of what you guys do, because I think it's so important and valuable. And for anyone that's watching now that would like to get in touch with you or FFE, what would be the easiest ways of doing that?
So really simple. We've got a website, www.financeforenterprise.co.uk. I'm on LinkedIn, so if you jump on LinkedIn, look for me, Jeremy Meadowcroft. There's not many of those about. I have all my contact details there. Give us a shout. We lend nationally, so the point for us is
Right,
we can lend anywhere in England and Wales. So it doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter what
right.
sector you're in. Jump on board. Give us a call, and I'm happy to chat through your circumstances as a human being. So human to human, we can have a chat, and you won't be
Love it.
answering any algorithmic questions. But yeah, it's good to talk. That's another cliche.
Definitely is, but it's very true. Um, Brilliant. Well, Jeremy, I'd love to get you back again at some point in the future and just talk about what's going on and the things that you're continuing to do, and to make sure we highlight this for as many people as we can. But for now, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you.